Hi, it's Cheryl from Garden in the Borough. Gardening here in Zone 5B, 6A in central Massachusetts on our 1 acre plot that we've created over the past couple dozen years. And we're going to share some videos of some of the interesting plants that are growing here and some of the projects that we do. So I hope you come along with us for the journey. So I think to start out these video series, what I'm going to do for a few anyway, is just kind of do mini garden tours so you can kind of get a feel of what we grow here and how we do our garden ornamentation and planting. And then we'll get into some more specific stuff. So you're going to see a lot of clematis, a lot of woody plants, a lot of, um, I love vines. And of course, there's going to be perennials and roses and hydrangeas. But, um, we're going to basically start just with some mini garden tours. So there are a lot of clematis that grow in this garden, and they grow into shrubs, into trees, up trellises, really pretty much anywhere I can stick one. I throw them in the ground and then a lot of times just let them find their own way. And this is a clematis. It's definitely a Viticella type. Although it was sold to me unnamed, I think it might be Minuet. And it has these really cool recurved petals on its flowers and really cool flower buds before they open. And this thing is ginormous, which a lot of the Viticellas are. And it's growing into this Viburnum trilobum, the American cranberry bush. And it's growing up into the crabapple tree. And it's growing up the trellis to the top of the porch. And from now until probably about September time, this, without any intervention from me whatsoever, is going to just be covered in flowers. You can see how many buds are still on there to open, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. And it is an amazing clematis and really, really easy to grow. And its partner over here, Betty Corning, also a Viticella type. Viticella, I don't know. I always stumble over that word because everybody says it different. But you can see this is one of my very first clematis I ever planted. I've grown it in a couple of different areas. I think it is one of the easiest to grow. It certainly is one of the most beautiful. And again, it's going to be covered with these really beautiful nodding flowers, probably pretty close to September. And you can see, I'm going to back out a little bit, that once we moved up onto the porch and we're in the shade of this crabapple tree, and I have like a little seating area here, that this clematis is growing in a really shady location. So it's getting some dappled sunlight from up in the crabapple tree, and it gets a little bit of sunlight from the side. But for the most part, this clematis is in some pretty decent shade, and it's just so happy here. This garden is pretty near to where I was just standing on the porch, and I'm going to pan around so you can see where I was. So there's the porch with the two clematis I was just talking about, and now we're down into this shrub border over here. And this is an herbaceous clematis called Arabella, and it doesn't climb on anything, so it needs a different sort of support. So you can grow this one up into a shrub, or here I have it on like a little plastic support so it can lean up into the shrubs that are here. And my goodness, it's just so pretty. And you can see all the buds that have still yet to open on this clematis. Arabella, it's called. And this is its height. So it stands probably about up to my chin. So it might be 4.5, maybe 5 feet tops. And we're about to walk by one that finished blooming. This was an early large flowered hybrid called Dr. Rupel, just so we can see. Let me move this out of the way. oops, the seed head of this, which is really, really amazing. Clematis has such really funky seed heads, and there's a lot more that are still going to be on this. But why I wanted to come down here was to talk about a shrub that I grow in this border uh, for one reason only, and that's its fragrance. So if you look up at the top, and I'm going to try and pull one down, there's a lot of bees in here, but those funky looking brown flowers are the flowers of, here's one that hasn't opened yet. They're the flowers of Calycanthus florida. That in focus. And you can see it's a suckering shrub with these amazingly shiny, glossy leaves that just sort of finds its way around the garden and pops up. And these flowers, when they open, smell like a pina colada or a tropical drink of some kind. And this shrub, amongst many others that were planted, here's some more of the foliage. You can see how glossy it is. Was planted down into this garden for their scent. So there's a close-up of some of the flowers as they're blooming. So when this is in bloom, which it's already been in bloom for well over a month, that came into bloom in early May, and it will just keep throwing out flowers now for probably at least another month. And when it's flowering, sitting on that porch, even that far away, well, it's not that far, but that's where the porch is. You can just barely see the stairs in the left-hand part of the view. You can smell the tropical drink flavor, scent, fragrance. So amazing. And this shrub, seriously, needs absolutely nothing. It's like what I call a sidewalk crack shrub, meaning it can grow pretty much in any kind of soil. It's pretty resilient as far as its drought tolerance. If it's happy, it will sucker everywhere. So you got to give it some space. It's not meant for, I would say, a small garden, but there are cultivated varieties that grow much more upright, but many of them aren't fragrant. The straight species is the one that is hands down the most fragrant. Oh, look, Dr. Rappel's throwing out one more flower on the side. So it's planted, like I said, in this garden because it gets such amazing fragrance that we can smell from sitting on the porch. There's the last view of Arabella. And as we come out, I'll just show you here, the other suckering shrub that's in this area is Clethra alnifolia, which is summer sweet. And as soon as that Calycanthus is done, this Clethra will be in bloom, and that's what takes over the fragrance going into the late part of the summer. I'm just going to tell you how hot it is outside right now. We're going to get some thunderstorms come in a little bit, and this is our first, I guess, really just miserable day, like hot and humid and disgusting. But look at that honeysuckle. This is a honeysuckle called Sensation, and this has been blooming for, I don't know, a couple weeks anyway. And when you walk into this back garden, you just get hit with the fragrance. It's so amazing. And I don't see any hummingbirds now, but I really love sitting where you can see the top of this on the other side of our pool. And you can see another honeysuckle in the background. That's Major Willer. The hummingbirds love it back here. And I'm also going to share with you one of my little containers over here. So I'm going to flip the camera around. A lot of things in our garden. Oh, lots of rabbit cages. We have lots of things in this garden that are old and repurposed, and people give us their junk all the time. And this wheelbarrow that actually is now being shored up on the bottom, you can see, came from my friend Nancy, and when it was no longer usable in her garden. So we use it as a container, and it's got a really gravelly mix of potting soil in there. So what's growing in it is this sedum, who's starting to revert from its yellow leaves. I can't remember its name. This is sedum John Creech. This is a little annual. This is lemon thyme, which if you don't grow lemon thyme, oh my goodness, just walking out here in the morning and brushing your fingers against the leaves releases that amazing citrus aroma. So there's some little pieces of birch that we kind of take off our trees that are also in this container. And one of them, Bill actually drilled a hole in so I can put like a little votive glass in there. See if you can see it. And when we have garden tours, which we had this past weekend, that's why that coreopsis bloom looks so shady. We can put little hosta leaves or flowers or something else that sort of match also. This container is always planted to match this honeysuckle. They're right next to each other. So when you're walking down, this color gets sort of echoed, even though nothing this color really is in the garden. Behind it, we have a beautiful dogwood bench. And behind here, well, this is Symphoricarpos, 9-bark, great native shrub. And then you can see all throughout this garden, my goodness, that's Pycnanthemum virginiatum, this fuzzy-leaved mint. That's a native plant that sort of just pops up wherever it wants to grow, which is the entire garden. This is a little flower bed that's right off the back of our house, sort of next to where our pool is. And even in a tiny space, you can fit so much stuff. And this garden is no exception. It has four clematis growing in it. Right now blooming is Elsa Spath, which is this amazingly beautiful early large flower hybrid with these just massive blooms. And then in the back, that's Polish Spirit, which is actually a late flowering variety, which has just really started to open up in the past few days. And it will carry on for most of the summer, just blooming and blooming and blooming. And it's a very large vine. And the largest vine of all of them in here is actually one called Summer Snow that won't get going. You can see there's a piece of it sort of hanging off there. And that vine will start blooming probably by the end of this month, and it will go through most of the summer. And this thing is ginormous. Once it starts going, it's going to take over this whole fence and smother everything in this garden. There's another closer view of Polish Spirit over here. All right, as we take a walk over here to look at the garden that's on the side of our shed, I want to show you some plants that are in this bed we planted last year. But first, if you're wondering what's in the background there, somebody asked me last weekend on our garden tour if it was a sculpture. It is actually our blueberries. And after many years of trying to figure out how to cage them so we could actually eat them, I started using landscape cloth that you use to cover for frost protection. And you can see all the blueberries in there. And they're tied at the bottom. And we've had pretty good luck with that, knock on wood. So hopefully it's going to continue. So what's going on that's pretty cool in this bed right now is the Russian comfrey. This plant it can be a thug. I would not plant this if I had a really small garden, which this garden's pretty big. And it needs some soil moisture, but for at least probably 2 months, these amazing blue flowers that the bees love. I don't know where they are right now. It's really hot out today. Maybe they're sleeping. But what a cool plant with a deep taproot. And you can see it spread, so you kind of have to have a firm hand with it, and you just sort of yank it out where you don't want it. So maybe 3 years ago, we had these massive mugo pines in here we had to take out. So I'm letting this sort of fill in, and you can see the plants that are going to take over behind it. But for now, the comfrey gets to just live its life. This clematis fleury and a smooth hydrangea, and these are all just filling out. So it will take some time for this bed to get going, but we gardeners are pretty patient. This cool little plant is called Bradbury's monarda. It's a little native bee balm, and it's blooming here about a month earlier than our other bee balms. And it's pretty short, but it's a pretty great ground cover. It will live in some shadier locations and also will be in the sun and do pretty well. And I'm going to sort of zoom in on the foliage on some of them, and you can see that dark color, and that's very representative of what they look like in the fall. So this will turn that color, the whole bunch of it, in the fall. And now it's just in its bloom time. So one of the plants that I grow quite a number of in the garden is weigela, and I think it's such a beautiful, easy care for shrub. So I kind of dot it here and there, and most of them are just coming to the end of their bloom. What you're looking at right here is one that's a dwarf that I got at a specialty plant sale a long time ago. It's been in this hypertufa planter out here out back for about 15 years, just living its life, requiring no attention from me whatsoever. It's never bloomed, but it's still, the foliage is just so attractive, and it just makes me happy to look at it. We're going to look at some other weigelia in other parts of the garden that are just finishing up their blooming and were just spectacular this year. And this variegated Sienna lutea, with its beautiful variegation on the leaves, and we have it sort of pruned up so you can see through the bottom of it into our pollinator house. That was actually, I used to work at the information table for the Massachusetts Master Gardeners at the Boston Flower Show when that was a thing, which seems like eons ago. And this was part of a display once that a friend in the Master Gardeners, Paul Cook, made. And it came home with me and I painted it, and it's been living here ever since. And actually, more in the springtime, we'll get things nesting in there, and I'll have to kind of stay away because I'm allergic to anything that stings. And you'll see them coming mostly out of the back of it. I don't see any activity right now, but it usually has. That little clematis growing up there. This is another weigela. This one's called French lace. These beautiful sort of reddish pink flowers. And this gorgeous variegated foliage. This is one of my favorite ones, and there are a couple of them growing in this garden. This garden actually at this time of year is really beautiful. There's alba rugosa roses growing in here, the weigela, and then a whole bunch of spirea that was planted here when we first moved in, because it's all sand here, and this is a really easy to care for shrub, and they're about to come into bloom right now. And then that container over there, which I'm going to go over and talk about in a second. I just want you to appreciate how beautiful those weigela are. And then we'll walk over. Little native, little blue stem grasses in here. As always, there's going to be more mint. So we struggled for quite some time with this container that we put in here. No, I shouldn't say the container. I should say what was going to get put there. If you look down at the ground, I'll kind of go in a little bit, and you can see that this whole area has nothing growing in it, and that's because of the arborvitae. So this hedge of arborvitae right to the side, on the other side of it is a basketball court, so its roots can only kind of go this way. And in this section of the garden, the roots are wicked, and we've tried so many things planted in here, and nothing really survives for very long. So we decided we needed to put a container there, and we had found this container that we loved that wasn't big enough, and it's that I just panned into the top part of this. And so we went to this store called At Home. I just heard they're kind of filing for bankruptcy, but anyway, we went there and we just looked around until we found that's another container, like it's meant to be a tall pot. And the color match was so good that we just flipped it upside down and weighted it so it became the base. So now this container that we bought sits on top of it. And I planted this mandevilla and then just threw in nasturtium seeds, which are just starting to get going because Bill wants it to trail down, and these will bloom like a maroon color. So we'll keep an eye on this as summer goes on and see if it looks as beautiful as I hope it's going to. This clematis is called Comtesse de Bouchard, and its growth habit is, to me, really beautiful. It grows its buds all perched up on top of the stem facing the sky. So it's always so distinctive among the other vines in the garden just for that reason. And then the flowers all face up right into the sun. You can see how beautiful, oh, it's a little windy today. You can see how beautiful they are. And as more of them come into bloom, it's just spectacular. So this is one of the rare clematis that is actually growing on like its own structure here. It's grown on a bunch of different things over time, but this is where it's ended up. And this is one of the problems that a lot of people have with clematis is that the bottoms kind of look like this. They get brown, the leaves get fungal spots, and they sort of don't look so great, which is why it's awesome to grow them into shrubs and trees because you don't really see that. But I wanted this clematis to grow like this, so it grows in its own tutor. So we're coming now into, well, this is called the secret path. My grandsons helped me lay these field stones that lead into our back garden, which is our current project. And if you look into the area that we're working in, you see the few plants that we have down this end are being protected from the rabbits and the critters while they get established. And these two stumps we took from my son's house, and my grandsons wanted little seats put back in here. So, and this came off of a birch tree that we had to prune. So we have all this space to add plants to. And I'll walk you and show you the areas that we've already started. Well, we planted, this is a suckering native honeysuckle, bush honeysuckle, that's going to fill out hopefully in part of this area. And we have some geranium, macrorhizum, and some low growth sumac. And these are all plants that tolerate dry shade very well. And we're coming up on some symphoricarpos, which is a beautiful little native plant that if it's planted on its own with plenty of space, it will kind of make a branchy shrub, but it's mostly a suckering shrub. And I'm going to pan around and you can see on the other side where some of it's growing. This one's actually flowering a little bit. And then it will have these big, huge, fat white berries that the birds kind of leave for a lot of the winter. So it will have those berries on them for a while. And you can see it popping up here. And you can see Bill's working on, we're trying to shore up this branch. I'm going to go cut that. Yep. So our project over the late spring was to take all of these white pines that are planted back here, and we've been slowly limbing them up so that the ground is free for planting. And again, we've gotten some of it planted, and I'm going to go back the way we just came. It's another cute little dry shade plant called Aruncus, just finishing flowering. Extremely tolerant of the dry shade-y conditions back here. So all these white pine, and there's a number of them, were growing right down to the base, and we pruned them all, and now we have lots of space to plant in here. And we had started over this side, this little rock chair, this is for one of my grandsons. We had started over on this side with the planting, trying to see what would grow. So it's been maybe 2 years. It's been 20 something years that we've been building up the soil back here because it was all sand. But this little mix of planting we have, the sum and substance hosta has really, really tough leathery leaves, so the rabbits tend to leave it alone. The pulmonaria, we have our native ginger, European ginger. Over here, the hosta are not thriving, but at least they're alive. Lily of the Valley, I'm probably going to end up taking out, but it also worked. And then this river birch and some ferns and more of the sum and substance hosta. In here, there's also some trillium, celandine poppy, and that's a hamamelis. And over on the opposite pathway, this is where we've just started planting, and we're struggling quite a bit with the rabbits that are so numerous this year, and every fern we put in gets eaten. This is a woodland phlox that got munched back down to the ground. We've caged some of them. Oh, this is hamamelis. I'm sorry. On the other side that we were looking at, that's lindera, which is a native shrub that blooms about the same time as forsythia, and it has a very distinct bark and leaf flavor, and deer and rabbits generally don't eat it. So between that and the hamamelis, we'll have a few woody plants over here. You can see every hosta we put in, there's a few survivors, but most of them look like this. And we put in rhodies, and you can see there's that branch that we're going to try and shore up so we can stop getting so much breakage on that. White pine, it's a cool branch. So Bill's going to use some branches we took from my son's house when he was doing some clearing and do that. So at the end of this pathway, when you come down, and there are these river birches, there's two of them over here, and one of them, that's my neighbor's house in the distance, we let its branches grow down to touch the ground to sort of screen off this garden. So when you're in here, it feels like you're in your own little area, your own little private secret garden. The other thing I'm going to point out about this area is when we planted all of this with this intention, when we first built our house and we put all these white pines back here, I asked a nurseryman what he would plant underneath them to make sure that as we limb them up, that we'd still have a screen underneath them. And he said to use forsythia. And so even growing, these plants have been in the ground 20 something years, these white pines and these forsythia, and they've been growing in some considerable shade. And you can see that they're still doing exactly what our intent was, which was giving us the screening underneath as we've been limbing the white pines up. So that was a pretty good suggestion. They don't often bloom, or sometimes they do at the top of the shrub, but they've been a pretty good screening plant, and they're growing literally in straight sand. This soil where they are was never augmented. We've been slowly using grass clippings, leaves, and compost, making real soil back here, which is why we've been able to add in the few plants that we've gotten to add in. And the best soil over here is obviously supporting everything pretty well. And hopefully if we just keep adding and adding and adding, pretty soon this will be my perfect little woodland garden. So now, since we're on a tour and we all have to be honest about every part of our garden, we'll come out of my little shade curtain, my little privacy curtain here. Oh, and there's Bill cutting. And this is another little section of the woodland garden that we're trying to fill in. And we're using, again, another forsythia, but also that's a red osier dogwood, or that might be a yellow twig dogwood. And the red osier one is really tiny because I'm just taking suckers from the garden hosta that's getting eaten And surprisingly, the rabbits even ate this smooth hydrangea down to the ground. It's rebounding now, so that's good. And you can see, even though they don't always eat the summon substance hosta, sometimes they just bite the leaves off for good measure. But as we come out of this little area that we're trying to fill in, this is the work part of our garden. So this is our compost pile. I'll sort of pan down it, and you can see that's where we keep all the woodier stuff, limbs and branches and stuff. We do have a chipper, and we use it to chip, and we make our own mulches with it. And then we use all of our own compost. We compost everything. We covered it all with the last set of wood chips we just made a few weeks ago to hold in the moisture so it will rot down faster, which helps considerably. And this actually was the base of our kids' old swing set. And we've used it in the past just for leaf mold. So all that went in here was leaves from the fall, and then we could use the leaf mold. Let me back up so you can see. But right now it's being used for straight up compost. And as soon as I end up using all the compost that's in here, it will go back to being leaf mold. We do use one of these. You can see that these are the things we use for staking, leaning up against it. We have one of these little from Gardener's Supply Company. And when we have to compost our food, like fruits and vegetables and that kind of stuff, they go in here just because it keeps the critter population down. So we put them in there instead of the general compost pile. And now we're back again to where we started earlier at the blueberries and coming out to one of my favorite views in the garden, which is out this little pathway. I just like how open it is, and I think it's a really pretty view into the side garden. So I hope you enjoyed our little garden video tour today. You can meet, before you go, you can meet Georgia. Hi, Georgia. Georgia's one of our 2 corgis, and this is her part of the garden. And I hope you'll come back in the next video and we see what's going on in the garden maybe next week.